Hello there, folks. This is Mark Smith with Family Tree Counseling Associates, and I have a really good video for you today. I don't know that I've ever said that before at the beginning, but I feel like this one's going to be sort of special. I put a lot of heart and time into this. Before we get started, I wanted to read sort of a cute little quote by person named Nanez Hoffman from Sweatpants and Coffee. And she wrote, "What do we do today? Make coffee." And so I got that down and made me some coffee. Make art. Write good words. Do good deeds. Work hard. Love hard. Find what is good and beautiful and share it. Laugh, cry, heal, grow, and above all, hang on to hope and to each other. And so to me, that's what making videos are about. It's making art and sharing some good words with you, and finding what is good and beautiful and sharing it with you, and putting out my hand of friendship and healing and hope to each of you so that we can really hang on to each other. So I have never dedicated one of my videos to anybody, but today, for the first time, I'm going to dedicate this video, and I'm going to dedicate it to Jerry Wise. Jerry Wise is my oldest friend. I met when I was 17 years old. Jerry, you're the best man that I know, and you're the most talented man I know, and you're the sweetest man I know. So God bless you. This is for you, my brother. The title of the video today is "It's Time for You to Take the World by Storm." And I know who I'm talking with. I'm talking with folks who've been shattered, folks who have experienced narcissistic abuse syndrome. And the thought of you guys rising up to take the world by storm might shock you, because the world has taken you by storm, and it has rattled you and wounded you and beaten you and harmed you and raped you psychologically, financially, emotionally, legally, every way possible. But I want to inject some fire in your belly and some hope and some fight back. Most of you know that I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan, and we play in the playoffs starting tomorrow against Green Bay Packers. And they have these videos they've been making called "Let's Finish This Fight." And what it was they had some of the best players share their struggles in life and their struggles in their professional careers, and then talk about how through hard work and determination and faith that they overcame the struggles, like the death of a parent, or not being drafted, or being injured, or being cut from a team, or whatever. And at the end of this last one, they had a motivational speaker named Les Brown. A lot of you probably have heard of him. And it was his voice given a talk on emotional hunger and fight and commitment to your dreams. And it was like really cool music in the background, inspirational music. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about my struggles for those of you who haven't heard my story. But the real power of this video is I'm basically going to go through and quote the Les Brown speech that was so powerful And I sort of blended it with a little bit of material I got off one of his followers, a coach from turbomind.com. And a lot of my thoughts intermix. So I'm intermixing three sources when I get to the inspirational speech. So I'll tell you when that starts. But if you've heard my story, you don't want to hear it again, just fast forward. But it's important, I think, if you're going to believe in me as somebody who can help you with this fight, to hear the kind of fight that I've been through. My story started with severe abandonment as an infant. I called it purple baby abandonment rage, where I never bonded with my mother, and I was left to just cry and scream until I turned purple for most of my first year. And there was this huge wound in my soul, and I didn't know it, because Mother Nature, the bigger the wound, the better the psychological defense mechanism were issued. So I like to say that my issues were cryogenically frozen until I was about 45 years old. Most of you know what cryogenically frozen means. It's a process where substances susceptible to damage and decay are preserved by cooling to sub-zero temperatures. And, we've read sometimes about somebody who wants to beat death, so they've been cryogenically frozen, hoping to be woken up, 100 years from now or whatever. But my purple baby neediness, abandonment rage was deeply buried, and it was frozen behind religious addiction was my main addiction. And I was high on Jesus, and I'm all for Jesus, I believe, but in my case, I used my Christian faith as an addictive substance and as a denial mechanism to survive and to keep from knowing the truth about myself. I hid behind walls of counterdependency, which made me somebody who was grandiose and arrogant, and somebody who was overly independent, oblivious, somebody who was a workaholic, and somebody who was overly self-absorbed, and somebody, due to growing up in chaos, had a lot of issues around feeling out of control and being controlling. So, and I was blessed enough to have 27 years in a marriage with a lovely, good, solid woman who was the opposite of my mother. And I've shared with you guys that when you are in an anti-type marriage, most of you fall in love with your type, which unfortunately is probably a narcissistic father or mother or both. And then you replicate that by getting involved with a narcissistic spouse. And I grew up with an abandoning, broken, nearly autistic father and a borderline mother, and was severely abandoned, but yet I didn't pick anybody who was like, I picked the opposite. She was so good and so strong and so stable. But what happens is when you pick somebody like that at midlife, you're vulnerable to have your issues come up. So until 45, I was really content in this anti-type marriage and focusing on my 3 wonderful children and busy saving the world and being rescuing and being a workaholic and being oblivious. And long about 2005, I got my first taste of complex PTSD. And I've gotten some nasty comments in the past where I've mentioned that starting in 2005 through 2007, I was vulnerable because my real self had been hidden and frozen all those years. And women came along who psychologically were put together like my mother. And I had, several affairs. Some of them, one was emotional, one was more of a traditional affair, but it was very intense. And some of you have judged and said, "Well, dude, you're the bad guy. You're the guy who leaves his family." And I want you guys to understand: don't judge. That wasn't a narcissist abandoning his family. That was an abandoned, needy little boy who was resonating with mommy-like figures. Now, when that happens, that certainly is an addictive process, and I have so much deep regret and remorse for bringing harm to my ex-wife and to my children. But I really, that was something at my core, and there wasn't a whole hell of a lot of moral choice involved. There was a lot of being vulnerable and needing to reenact these issues. So enough of that. So ended up then engaged, as you guys know the story, to a particularly wicked, borderline person who had some real strong narcissistic traits as well. And after April 26th of 2015, I was psychologically unhinged. I was shattered. I had continual, really deep weeping. And when I would weep, my voice would change. And I wouldn't be a 55-year-old man. I would sound like a little kid. My voice would change because it was coming from a wounded little kid. I had exhaustion that I can't even describe. I had frequent, violent, horrific panic attacks. I had cognitive dissonance and confusion and obsessive thoughts, and my hands were shaking. For months and months, my whole system was in shock. I had this deep pain in my chest. On December the 13th of 2015, I made a video, The 50 Symptoms of Narcissistic Abuse Syndrome. And I just talked about, I'm not going to talk about all 50 here. I'm going to hit the worst 20 for me, but that's, if you want to know my story, start with the 50 Symptoms of Narcissistic Abuse Syndrome video, which has just gone over about 115,000 views. So it resonated with this community. I had addiction to the perpetrator, claustrophobia, brain fog. I lost my appetite. I lost 53 pounds. I was hypersensitive to bright lights and loud sounds. And that one really hasn't gotten better, actually. If there's really loud music, I start to really get really uncomfortable due to that PTSD symptom. I was hyperkinetic, just really hyper. I would pace the room frequently. I had a sense of hypervigilance and being on guard for danger. I was easily startled. I suffered from identity erosion. I had some rage from deep down inside me when I thought about this borderline who just did horrific mind-fucking things, and then told me about them just a little bit at a time, just ripping the scab off over and over and over again. When the wounded little boy in me was looking, for her to be my mommy. And, I believed that she loved me, and she sure didn't act like she did. She was just this horrific sex addict and liar and betrayer. And it did bring up a sense of powerlessness. I felt psychologically raped and defiled. There was a lot of financial destruction involved because I couldn't work for a couple of months. and I spent a hell of a lot of money on treatment centers and therapists. And then I was narcissistically abused by proxy from the treatment center this woman went into, the Bridge to Recovery. So that's my story. And fast forward until just this past December, just before Christmas, there was some narcissistic wounding by proxy. I had continued to work on my issues through romantic entanglements and had gotten involved with another particularly dangerous psychopath this past summer. And due to really the astonishing power of a cunning narcissist, they can replicate themselves and inject poisonous, hateful, judgmental, harsh, shaming, negative, vicious, irrational energy into what really should have been an unbiased, professional, objective government agency. Due to me putting myself in that process, 2 of my best associates had to leave our practice, including one of my oldest and dearest friends. And with that process, we lost over 1 million YouTube views because we needed to take those videos down. And so for me, and for a lot of the folks at Family Tree, we have been feeling a sense of shock and powerlessness and confusion and shame and complex PTSD and just a sense of unfairness of the process. It's something that we will resolve because we have truth and integrity on our side. But y'all know that an accusation is as bad as a conviction sometimes when you're dealing with legal entities who are manipulated by flying monkeys. So we're good. The truth will prevail, but it really does hurt when you see negative energy coming your way and you're like, where did this come from? So I wanted to read you a quote from an email from one of these associates' supporters, the fabulously talented Jerry Wise. And this person wrote, "Jerry, you're an exquisite person." He is. And you're incredibly strong, and you're such an inspiration. And don't take this unexpected situation with the practice as a negative. Maybe it's happening so you can officially take the world by storm. Write your magnum opus. Hold conferences or workshops or talks. You are in the ranks of psychology's greats. I just thought that was so wonderful and powerful. And I want to say the same thing to all of you. As you've been backed into a corner and as you've been harmed and abused directly and by proxy, and it has caused you loss in your life, perhaps this is happening to you so you can officially take the world by storm and write your magna opus, your beautiful concert filled with amazing music from your heart. Hold conferences and workshops and talk. In other words, turn something terrible into something great with a lot of faith, a lot of work, and a lot of determination. So one of the questions I got recently in a live stream was, how do you fight back? How do you survive? Excuse me. How do you overcome after experiencing narcissistic abuse and after experiencing narcissistic abuse out of the blue by proxy? So, all right, now I'm ready for my motivational speech. If I had the cool music, I'd play it in the background starting now. Again, it's a combination of Les Brown, motivational speaker, turbomind.com, and myself. If you want to recover from narcissistic abuse, you've got to be relentless, my friends. Most of us go through life with our brakes on, frequently holding back due to fear and due to the symptoms of complex PTSD. Many narcissistic abuse sufferers will go to their graves still holding back because of their past woundings and their past defeats, their past public shamings, and their overwhelming PTSD symptoms. We look back and we tell ourselves, well, it didn't work out so well then, so it probably isn't going to work out very well now. People who overcome narcissistic abuse have to have a driving hunger, an ability to face defeat again and again without giving up. We are all about defeating defeat itself. When you're that kind of hungry, you don't care what the facts are that are aligned against you. You don't care what the odds are. If there's something that you need to do to be safe and to be successful and to thrive, and you're hungry for it, you do what you have to do. You do what is necessary to get to thriving. And when you've done the best that you can and that's not good enough, then you do some more of whatever is required to mount a comeback, to dig yourself out of a hole, to defeat narcissistic abuse syndrome, and to, as a rabbi would say, to become a living nightmare to your narcissist. Her book is actually Becoming a Nightmare to your narcissist. But I'm saying that you can become a living nightmare to the narcissist. You've got to harness your recovery process. There's great power in your recovery process, and you've got to be relentless, that you're always looking for a way to get through. Always looking for a way to get through. You're always looking for a way to genuinely and deeply love and nurture yourself. You're always looking for a way that you can win. You're always looking for a way that you can strike a telling blow. You have to fight back, people, without being filled with the desire for revenge, but just needing to protect yourself and advocate for yourself so you don't get destroyed and misrepresented to the world as to who you are. There is greatness in you. You've got to learn how to tune out the critics, tune out the flying monkeys on the outside, and even more importantly, to tune out the inner critic, the shame that binds you. Please don't give up on yourself. Never give in. Never give in to hopelessness and shame and powerlessness or PTSD or flying monkeys or fear or poverty or psychological paralysis or the sense of being defeated. You've got to sell yourself every day on the power of your recovery process. You've got to sell yourself every day that what you're doing and what you're called to do and the goal that you have set before yourself can and will be reached. You've got to sell yourself on yourself every single day. It takes courage to act. It takes courage to start all over again when you have gone through defeat. It takes courage to be persistent. When you step into your fears and continue to push yourself to go on, something happens for you. It will enable you to transcend yourself. There is a hell yes, I can do this. Very close and attainable. And you have to continue until you find it. So don't go where the path may lead. Go where there is no path and leave a trail. This is your day. And nothing out there is going to stop you. Don't go to the graveyard with your music still inside you. Do what you do and do it massively. Don't go to the graveyard with your music still inside you, with your book still inside you, with your dreams being unrealized. Don't go to the grave without experiencing a healthy relationship. Don't go to the grave without getting your swagger back. Don't go to the grave getting beaten by some miserable, childish narcissist. Gather up the fire in your belly and do what you've been called to do, and do it massively. Don't go to the grave with the music still in your heart. The world really does have good things for you. I know that all of us who've gone through this, we're always looking for the other shoe to drop. And sometimes if we let the devil in the door, sometimes there is a shoe that drops again. But it's all an opportunity for us to learn and grow and heal and to get healthier. And ultimately, it's all good. But through recovery and through having insight and through healing that wounded inner child, you can make your mark on the world again. It's time for you to take the world by storm. It's time for you to stop being terrified. It's time for you to stop living in negativity and living in what you can't do. And it's time to dictate to the world what you're going to do. So I am grateful for the learning that 2017 has provided thus far, and it's done nothing but make me more determined. I'm excited to finish this fight of ongoing recovery and of really living, oh, that's beautiful, living a life of tranquility, living a life of safety, living a life being emotionally and financially blessed, and living a life where you can give back to people and share with them your own experience. And you guys can thrive in 2017. You can overcome even the nastiest kind of narcissistic abuse. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, Family Tree Counseling on YouTube, please do so. Also, we're getting so many people reaching out to us and saying, you know, I can't afford me no expensive therapist. You know, how can I get help? And we've been really referring them to our live stream show that meets every Tuesday evening, 8:30 to 10 Eastern Time. And you can message in during the live show and we will answer your questions. Myself and Karen Henry Smith and Andy Holtzman, and we're going to have a new associate, Peg Nicodemus, be joining us on the show. And it's a community, and you guys end up talking to each other and getting questions answered by each other as well as by the staff. So I'm wishing you power. I'm wishing you a belief in yourself. I'm wishing you fire in your belly, and I'm wishing you some swagger. And I'm wishing some swagger from my Dallas Cowboys. Thank you for watching today, folks. I love you guys. God bless.